Here is an official statistic. In 2024, adjusted for what money actually buys, Ireland produced $119,000 of economic output for every single person in the country. The United States? $75,000. On paper, Ireland is 58% richer per person than the richest large economy in human history. Ask an economist in Dublin whether that's true, and they'll laugh at you. Nobody in Ireland believes this number. The Irish government doesn't believe it. The statisticians who publish it don't believe it. And they are right not to, because roughly a quarter of Ireland's official economy isn't really Ireland's. This is the story of the greatest accounting trick in modern economics. By the end, you'll know exactly how the trick works, why it still made real people genuinely richer, and why the whole machine is now living on borrowed time. Start in 1990. Ireland is the underdog of Western Europe. Output per person, around $29,500, roughly 10% below Britain and 30% below Germany. For most of the 20th century, Ireland's most reliable export was its own young people. Then it caught fire. Low taxes, a young English-speaking workforce, and a doorway into the European market. American companies arrived, and the Celtic Tiger was born. Ireland passed Britain in the mid-90s. It passed Germany just before the millennium. By the early 2000s, it had passed the United States itself. That part of the story is real. But watch what the line does after 2015. That's where reality ends and the accounting begins. In 2015, Ireland's economy officially grew by 24.6%, not over a decade, in one single year. For a mature, developed economy, numbers like that simply do not happen. And here's the strange part. On the ground, nothing happened. No boom on the streets of Dublin. No forest of new factories. The country looked more or less the same in December as it had in January. The Nobel laureate Paul Krugman looked at the figure and gave it a name that stuck: leprechaun economics. Because the wealth was exactly as real as a leprechaun's gold. So what actually happened in 2015? A handful of very large companies moved some paperwork. Here's the machine. Ireland charges companies 12.5% tax on profits, one of the lowest headline rates in the developed world. And for decades, arrangements with names like the Double Irish let multinationals pay far less than that, routing profits through Irish entities toward zero tax islands. So the most profitable companies in history came to Ireland. Apple, Google, Microsoft, Pfizer, not mainly for factories, for paperwork. A company designs a phone in California, builds it in Asia, sells it in Paris, and the profit lands in Dublin. Because the intellectual property, the patents and the software rights legally lives in an Irish subsidiary. In 2015, under international pressure, the Double Irish was closed to new entrants. The companies responded by moving the intellectual property itself onshore, hundreds of billions of dollars of it, into Ireland proper. That is what grew by a quarter that year. Not Ireland. Ireland's filing cabinets. You can actually watch the paperwork arrive. Foreign direct investment flowing into Ireland in 2015. $226 billion in 1 year. Into a country of roughly 5 million people. That is more than $45,000 of inbound investment for every man, woman, and child, and more than double the previous year, which had itself been an all-time record. This was not money building Irish towns, Irish ports, or Irish schools. It was balance sheets migrating. Assets moving from one filing cabinet to another because the tax weather happened to be nicer. So how do you measure a country like this? You need two numbers. GDP counts everything produced inside Ireland's borders, no matter who ultimately pockets the money. GNI, gross national income, counts what the residents of Ireland actually earn. In most countries, the two are nearly identical. In Ireland, in 2024, GDP $609 billion. GNI $458 billion. The gap $151 billion. Roughly a quarter of the entire official economy. That quarter is profit flowing through Ireland, not to it, on its way to shareholders somewhere else. GDP counts it because technically it happened there. GNI doesn't because the Irish never see it. One number describes the filing cabinets. The other describes the country. Think of Dublin Airport. Millions of passengers pass through it every year. They land, they change planes, they leave. Now, imagine Ireland counted every single one of them as a new resident. That, roughly, is what GDP does to Irish money. It counts everything that touches the ground, including the vast river of profit that only stops in Ireland to change planes. The distortion got so bad that in 2017, Ireland's own Central Statistics Office effectively gave up on GDP and invented a replacement, Modified Gross National Income, GNI star, a measure designed to strip the multinational noise out of their own economy. Think about that for a second. A country so successful at attracting other people's money that it had to invent a new statistic just to see itself. Now, here's what makes Ireland interesting instead of just absurd. Underneath the phantom money, there is a real country, and the real country genuinely did get rich. The proof isn't GDP, it's jobs. In the 1980s, Ireland was one of the poorest corners of Western Europe, exporting its young people by the plane load. After the 2008 crash, unemployment hit 15.5%, and the old immigration fear came roaring back. Today, it's around 4.3%, effectively full employment. Spain, which crashed at the same time, is still above 11. And whatever the multinationals came for, they stayed to employ hundreds of thousands of real Irish workers in real Irish jobs. The mirage sits on top of a genuine transformation. That's exactly what makes it so hard to see. But every trick has a shelf life, and this one is now being squeezed from both ends. In 2021, more than 130 countries signed on to an OECD plan for a global minimum corporate tax of 15%, and it came into force across the European Union in 2024. Ireland's great advantage is being legislated away. And then there's the strangest court case in the history of money. In 2016, the European Commission ruled that Ireland had given Apple illegal tax benefits and ordered Apple to pay Ireland 13 billion euros plus interest. Ireland's response? No, thank you. It appealed. Ireland spent 8 years in court fighting for the right to not receive 13 billion euros. Because accepting the money would mean admitting how the game worked. In September 2024, Europe's highest court made the final call. Apple pays. Ireland was ordered to become richer over its own objections. So, is Ireland rich? Yes, genuinely. It's one of the great development stories of the modern era. Is it the richest major economy on Earth? 58% ahead of America per person? No. That is a mirage, created by the world's most profitable companies parking their intellectual property where the taxes are low. And Ireland's lesson isn't really about Ireland. It's that GDP, the single most quoted number in economics, the number governments rise and fall on, can be bent until it describes a country that doesn't exist. Ireland just did it more spectacularly and more profitably than anyone else. The next time you see a headline ranking countries by GDP, remember the leprechaun. Some of that gold is real, and some of it vanishes the moment you try to touch it. Every number you just saw is public, World Bank data, EU court rulings, and Ireland's own statistics office, all linked in the description, so you can check the machinery yourself. If you want to see how countries, companies, and property markets actually make and lose money, charted from the raw data, subscribe. Next time, Venezuela versus Norway. 2 countries that struck oil and the machinery that made one of them rich and the other one collapse.